Welcome to the King's Court podcast. I'm your host, King Roberto. Thanks for joining me for this podcast this week. I'll warn you now, it's terrible. It's probably 30 minutes or so of your time that you're never going to get back, but the fact that you're here makes me very, very happy. So last week, had an amazing guest host with me. That was the wonderful Nikki, and should be glad to know that we had 18 downloads last week. 18 downloads, and she kind of, busted my chops a little bit. How come you didn't pimp that podcast on the Instagram page? You pimp all your other ones and try to get those. It's nothing personal. I just have a little bit of a rotation with the Instagram postings, but I will post a snip of the podcast to the Instagram page for her, just so that she feels a little bit of the love. But we did get 18 downloads, so that's awesome. We're excited about that. So it's been a week. Had the joyful ending of one of our fantasy football leagues. This one was a pick'em league, and just to go back before that, I like fantasy football. I like fantasy sports. This is back from one of the first episodes of the podcast that came out. I enjoy the fantasy aspect of things. I like the players. I like doing the research. I'm a big nerd when it comes to that stuff. I like the stats. I like putting it all together and seeing if you can build a better team than the team that's on the field. And most of the time, you can, because the teams that are on the field, they got things like salary caps and taxes and stuff that you don't have to worry about when you're in a fantasy league, stuff like that. But this particular league that I got roped into is a pick'em league, and this was the last week of football and the playoffs, the football playoffs, NFL. And it was basically something to do because the guy who organized it, Mr. BH, we don't need to use first names here because they might be sensitive to that if you don't call him, BH is the initials. So if BH is listening, just know I didn't out you because, that's kind of funny that you started this league because you lost in the other league with us. And you couldn't hack it there. So this is a payback league. And that's exactly what this league was. This is a payback league. You guys smoked me in the other league, so I'm gonna beat you in this one. And it's even named Taco Bill's pickled PICK apostrophe LD. So it's pickled eggs pick'em challenge. And this is how the league was presented to us. First question is, do you want to do it? Yeah, okay. Are you going to be serious about it? Yeah, okay. So each of you have committed to take this seriously. So if this is a fantasy pick'em league and it starts off with each of you have committed to take this seriously, you know that it's an angle for him just to whoop you. And so it's like, yeah, okay, we'll take it seriously. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm going to take it seriously because I actually don't like losing at all. And you accept both the treasure for winning or the punishment for losing. So FYI, not everyone here knows each other, so I'll make intros later, covering Arizona, California, and Washington so far. Just to be clear, the intros later never happened. It was like, yeah, this thing's happening, and I don't really care who's in it. As long as I beat all of your butts, then I'm a happy league organizer. And as it so happens, he did win his own league. So there's this and there's that about it, but I don't need to get into the details, right? But the end of the story is that I ended up second. And this is the year of seconds for the King because got second in the other league with the guys, got second in another pay league for Yahoo Fantasy Sports that I was in, and I'm second in this year. So I'm destined to be the bridesmaid, but never the bride. And that's just how this fantasy season went with football. So whatever. And then we got Jeff, who loves to, show off his winning style when he's winning $5,000 in this league and $18,000 in that league. And Jeff's a baller when it comes to betting. So anyways, this league went on, and I was doing all right for the first couple weeks, and then, lost it in the playoffs. I made some underdog bets that I probably shouldn't have made, or I guess you could say that I made favorite bets that I shouldn't have made also. But needless to say, the King ended up second. But that wasn't the worst. The worst was the poor dude who got last. And I got to tell you, I'm so glad I didn't get last in this league, because the Super Bowl was almost 2 weeks ago now. And so in this league, the fine print that was sent out with the invite was, but wait, everyone must agree to fulfill the last place penalty should they, quote unquote, earn it. The virtual walk of shame. Record a 60-second, quote, press conference video admitting you know nothing about football and apologizing to the league for wasting everyone's time. Extra points for props, fake tears, and calling it a learning experience. With a little reaction of a laughy face by a couple people. And this guy that lost it, there's a couple guys in here. I don't know who this guy is, but like I said, there was no introductions for the strangers in the league together. We're just a bunch of, strangers, friends of BH. But anyways, this guy, his name is Nathaniel, who lost. And Nathaniel did a yeoman's effort and job of doing this video. Of course, it was like 9 days after. And the video, I mean, it's so sad seeing this video of this guy. It's 1 minute and 25 seconds long. So not only was it 1 minute minimum, he put in the extra effort for the extra 25 seconds of telling us how awful he was at this pick'em league and how he cannot pick a football winner, and that he knows nothing about football, and that he was very sorry for wasting everybody's time. And I could appreciate that. And he even addresses everybody in the league except the people he doesn't know, because BH didn't make the introduction of everybody. He did not introduce everybody to everybody. So he didn't know the King. And so me being the King and being the nice guy that I am, I offered immediately, said, hey, I'm King Roberto. I got a podcast. So you should come on and we can talk about how much you did suck. That did not get a favorable response by young Nathaniel. In fact, it got no response at all because, I'm afraid that I was a bit intimidating when it comes down to it, and that he would have come on to this show and had to answer for why would you pick the Patriots in the Super Bowl? Or better yet, why would you not pick anybody in the Super Bowl? We all knew Seattle was going to win. Anybody knows Seattle's going to win, except for BH. He picked the Patriots, but whatever. Anyways, yeah, I had a couple of those questionable picks throughout the year yet myself, and that's kind of why I got second. But whatever, it's a lot of fun. I don't think anybody really got their feelings hurt. And Nathaniel, if I hurt your feelings with calling you out on the podcast, I'm really sorry. But you did waste my time by not making any picks for like 3 weeks in a row. That happened, and that was just last week. But, there's a reason that I think guys like to do this stuff. It's the fantasy league that I'm in with the boys, and I call them the boys loosely, but they're guys that I've known since it started back when my son started playing peewee football. That I met these guys, most of them, and there's just connection because the boys played football together all through high school, and my kid was the kicker, but he was a great kicker. Probably could have taken it a lot farther than he wanted to, but he was one of those kids who was not going to listen to his dad when he was a senior in high school. So there was no kicking in his future, and it just stopped after high school, which is, in my opinion, a shame. But I'm not the only father who does that with their son or goes through that with their son either. But these guys, I ended up coaching the last year with them because we had no coaches for the boys. And that's where I earned my name Half Speed, because We didn't have a full team. We didn't have a full defense and a full offense. We didn't have 22 players who could be on the field at the same time. We were a small team. All of our guys graduated out and moved on to the next level that the boys who were left behind were left with. And then the ones who were younger were too young to pull up. So a lot of my time with these guys, getting to know them and stuff, was on the football field coaching the kids. And I would, and my nerdiness, my geekness showed through right there, because I'm like doing film breakdowns in the emails. Hey, this team that and this team that. And who knows if I was right. And I don't think anybody really cared, but I liked doing it. I liked watching the film. It was fun for me. But we go back, a few years now. And once the boys graduated high school, this fantasy league started up. And BH is, he is the master instigator of connection and friendship. And I'm definitely grateful for that with him. But, the bonding there between all of us, we're all so competitive when it came down to the football stuff. And it was a natural progression into the fantasy realm for those of us who liked it. And we picked up a couple guys who were not football coaches with us, but they were connections through, one's a brother-in-law to one of the guys. And then the new guy who came in a couple of years ago and won the league for like the first 2 out of the 3 years, which is a bunch of crap. He's one of the buddies' friends there too. So, and then I roped Jeff into it, and Jeff, everybody knows that what you get with Jeff is, kind of a mixed bag. It just depends on if his wife's letting him go out that night or not, or if he's got to get kicked in the knee by his cow or something. We built him an awesome chicken coop. I will say the chicken coop that we built for Jeff is just top shelf. He engineered it. It's an engineered chicken coop, no less, with beam sizes for the concrete and everything, and the posts and the rafters. It's absolutely amazing. And the guys that I had working on it were the most thorough and dedicated men to their craft. It is just an awesome, outstanding chicken coop with no chickens in it anymore. So, but yeah, this whole thing with the fantasy team it's kind of fun, because there is some trash talking that goes on. We do it all starts at the draft day, right? And the draft day is usually at a location that is agreed upon beforehand to do a live fantasy draft. Might be a house, might be somebody else's house, might be the cabin, it might be different places. We've done it kind of all over the place. And draft day weekend is usually a weekend when we can swing it. But the thing is, the loser has to organize the weekend. So we are supposed to be organized to golfing. The loser brings drinks for everybody at their beck and call. And the loser from last year got off really light, but I don't think we're going to let the loser off light anymore. And that draft weekend starts with some trash talk, because it starts with the trash. And as you know, the King got A's in the draft, which is why the King also finished second in the league. You don't get to the championship round with your team unless you draft well in fantasy sports. And that's in any fantasy sport. You have to draft well to get to the championship. You're not going to do this all through free agency and the waiver wire and all that other crap. So when you're the King, you know how to draft, and you get to the fantasy championship more often than not. Usually these guys, we do a little trash talk there and have fun on that draft weekend, and then it's back and forth, and we got a group chat and everything else throughout the season, and it goes all the way down to the last weekend. And then we do the weekend, and we got the belt, the championship belt on the line. Winner gets the belt. Loser gets their name engraved on the outhouse trophy, which is an awesome trophy. And then the winner also gets a little championship ring. But, the competition that these guys, that it brings out, it's just good fun for everybody. And, that's part of my, legacy that I hope to leave with everybody, is that, that friendship, that camaraderie is something that I really enjoy. So I don't know if any of these guys are listening to the podcast, but I will say I appreciate y'all. If you're listening, have a beer for me to you, or a Coke Zero as I might be drinking tonight. But yeah, the thing is, the stats, and everything else, I will say, I even went to the effort of creating like this awesome spreadsheet of all the years that people have done it. I haven't updated it in probably a season or two. Kind of lost traction with it, but it was just a history of our league together. It was really cool. But yeah, the analytics of that kind of translate over to the podcast a little bit, and that's, looking back at how I performed, or how you perform from a draft position in a fantasy league, or how the kids were performing on film and stuff like that. It kind of ties into some stuff that I really enjoy, and that is the analytics. And I've had the time to reflect on this podcast with the analytics that come with the podcast hosting platform. And we did get 18 downloads last week, and people are 18 downloads. I don't know who's listening to this crap. It could be from, we did the episode where we kind of broke it down from what countries they're all over. They're all over different states or in different countries. It just depends on what hits with people. But for me, the downloads are not what I'm chasing. The numbers, they sometimes mess with your head when you overthink it, because you're putting the effort out there and it's like, man, this just isn't getting downloaded. And I had one of those moments this last week, and it was like, dude, why am I doing this? And then I had to kind of talk myself off the ledge, because it's easy to chase the scale of things. You want it bigger, you want better. And that's the competitive side of me, bigger, better. Measuring success is measured by statistics. And that's not really true. For me, the podcast, the downloads aren't the point. It's the same thing with the fantasy football bracket. The bracket wasn't the point. Playing the game was the point. Connecting with the guys was why I do it. Yeah, I want to win, but more than wanting to win, I want to do something fun with my friends. And you get the thing with friends is you pick who you want to have as your friends, and they likewise get to pick who they want to have as their friends. And there are some people who it's not a mutual picking. I know that there's guys in my friend group that I'm playing fantasy with, or any of the men that I know, that there are the guys that you can call and say, I need help. Or if you put it out there that, man, I'm in a bind, I need a hand. There are a few guys who will drop what they're doing to come help you. And I like to think that I would do the same for those same people. But it does tie back to that golden rule. You treat others how you want to be treated. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Are you going to drop everything when somebody calls and says they need help? If you don't expect them to do the same for you. And if you do, still don't expect them to do the same for you. And that's kind of where, life messes with you a little bit. But this podcast isn't necessarily chasing those downloads. It's not because I need help or they need help, or that's why that league matters to me. It's because of the guys. I like them. I enjoy hanging out with them. I hope hopefully they enjoy hanging out with me. And if they don't, that's their problem, because they're hanging out with the king. They just don't realize it. But the podcast, for me, why I do this is the archive, the memory. I'm getting older, and there's a reality of that. And, we look back, and I've got boxes of photos, and my wife did this with her dad, and my dad, to his credit, is doing this while he's still able to do it. But it ties back to why this podcast started. I'm sitting, if you look back or you listen back on those first podcasts, I'm sitting at home with my knee out of surgery, can't move, nothing to do. Well, let's do a podcast. That sounds like fun. Let's try it out. Let's get out of the comfort zone. But the whole premise of the podcast was to leave that archive, that legacy of me for my family. If something happens to me tomorrow, God forbid, they would be able to look back at this podcast and it would always be there. It would always be King Roberto talking to a camera by himself, one episode with his wife because, she loves him. And then it would be something that could be reflected on. And if there's a story to tell of who was this guy, what was he about? Part of that is in the podcast. And that legacy aspect is why I enjoy doing the podcast, because there's a voice message of my mom who passed in 2009, I think. 15 years last year. There's a voice message that I have of my mom on the answering machine. All right, it's the answering machine. So you young bucks out there, all you kiddos, yeah, we had these machines that answered the phones when we weren't there. They didn't just automatically go to voicemail in the air. There was a machine that you had to push a button on. You had to record the message, and then you got messages on it. And it was the cabin. It was a cabin answering machine, and it's her saying, "You've reached the cabin phone number. Please leave a message at the tone." And that is on my phone. And anytime I get to miss mom, I can just play this little thing back. And it's her, and you remember the voice, and the voice of somebody who's gone, being able to connect to your memories of that voice, because you don't always remember their voice when they're gone. Like my grandparents, I remember their voice, but if I heard their voice, it would sound different. It's the same thing, the same premise. At least that is in my mind, that, the memory of the person can fade, but having that voice to kind of pull you back and remind you of that is that person. I mean, that's important to me, and that's a big reason why I do this podcast. I'm not trying to get followers. I'm not trying to get downloads. Don't get me wrong, though. It's cool as heck if I do. And if I'm lucky enough to do this, and one person picks up something from listening to this ridiculous podcast that I do, and they say, "Oh, man, that one hit me," or "I can relate to that," or something, or it just touches anybody, that's a win for me. That is 100% a win for me, because I love the idea of having a positive impact on people. But like I said before, though, I mean, there is a meme that goes around, and it says, people have told me I am the biggest jerk they have ever met. And people have told me I'm the nicest guy that they have ever met. Which version of me you got was the version that you deserved. So, it goes back to that whole, who are you going to be? You're going to be the person for your friends who you're going to run for help when they need help, and you're going to be the person that they can count on, or not. I mean, you get the version of people that you deserve. So, but yeah, I mean, for me, this podcast also is, an opportunity to intentionally record my thoughts, because there's been many times where I've thought to myself that, man, I'm going to end up with Alzheimer's, and I'm not going to remember who I am. And if you ever watched Notebook, this is the Notebook part, I'm doing the work for my wife, right? I know she doesn't have to write the story. She doesn't have to write the notebook. She doesn't have to remind me of who I am or what we have together. I'm doing it for her. Or 50 First Dates, if you watch that one, he records the video, and, this is why you are the way you are, and, oh my God, you have a kid and you don't remember anything up to a certain point in your life. I'm creating the notebook for myself. So if I ever do go crazy or end up with dementia or Alzheimer's, not asking for that. Lord, please don't take that as a challenge. But I could watch a podcast and be like, oh, Nikki? Oh, I do like her, even though she's trying to, treat me with pillow therapy, because I am the best patient, as you heard last week, on the planet. I am the best patient. But a lot of guys, I don't think that the world is overflowing with men who record their thoughts intentionally, or they think to leave behind their voice. This isn't something I'm doing because I got a great big ego. I want to leave something behind for others to enjoy. And that influence doesn't require thousands or tens of thousands of downloads and followers. It just requires one person to connect with it. And so if I can put something out there that is deep enough to connect with that one person, that's definitely worth doing for me. So I definitely want to leave behind like the picture of who I was as a whole. I like to think that wise, strong, funny, loving, flawed, and honest kind of all bring it together. But, maybe I'm forgetting one. Man of Steel comes to mind. But yeah, I mean, the whole fantasy football stuff and baseball, the fantasy sports things with the guys, it kind of becomes part of that story, part of that archive, the trash talk with each other, even though Nathaniel did a terrible job in his Pick'em League. And I got to tell you, Mr. Bradford in the fantasy league was not much better. He had a heck of a year. But, that all becomes a pace that is cemented in memory and legacy now. There will never go a day from here forth that somebody listens to the King Roberto podcast, the King's Court podcast, and forgets that Nathaniel lost or that Mr. Bradford lost. The doctor, as we call him, the doctor, yeah. So, yeah, the brotherhood and the friendship and these guys, like I said, there are a few of them in that group that I know that if I need to, I could make a phone call and say, I need help, and they'd be there at the snap of a finger to do whatever they could to help, and I appreciate the heck out of that. So, let's see, Royal Decree. We're going to go with, I got a couple options this week. We'll go with this one. Winning is temporary. Showing up is legacy. And that kind of sums it up. The stuff that we do, you can win. And that's great that you win. You'll always be able to call yourself a champion, which I am, because I've won multiple times, several times in the last couple of years, and I got the ring. You'll always be able to call yourself a champion as long as you win, but showing up for those who need it, being dependable and reliable, and someone that they can count on. It is your legacy. Are you going to be the flake who's always there for the glory, but never there when somebody else needs it? Or are you going to be the guy who is humble in your glory and always willing to help others reach theirs? And I like to think that I'm the latter of that. And if you disagree, yep, you knew it was coming. If you disagree, you can send me an email, or you can reach out to me on Instagram, or shoot me a message on X, a DM on one of those, and let me know why. So the guys who are listening to this that might be in the Fantasy Football League, hey, I want to say thanks for the competitive spirit and making it hard on me to get second in the league this year. I tried to make it just as hard as on you, but there's one son of a gun that beat me. Nathaniel, if you're listening, come on the show, man. Let's talk about how awful you are at picking winners and losers at football. That would be a fun show. All in good fun, my friend. All in good fun. There's nothing personal here. I don't even know Nathaniel other than his name is Nathaniel. I don't know whose friend he is. Given the way that he lost in such grand fashion, I don't know if he's actually BH's friend anymore. So, yeah. The legal reset next season, you can be sure that I will be telling you about it when it happens. But the friendships and the bonds and the brotherhood that comes with that never resets. That will endure as long as both sides of that friendship want it to. With that, I'm going to leave you for the week. There will be a episode 5 next week. And look on, and if you're still listening, I'm sorry that is 32 minutes of your life that you won't get back. But take a moment and go check out the King's Instagram page, because there will be a post with the Queen going out and pushing the podcast out there and saying how wonderful of a person she is, because that's what kings do, gentlemen and ladies out there listening. So I will see you next week. Goodbye.